Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends! What an amazing day it is! Welcome back. I hope that your day has just been absolutely outstanding. We got some serious business to attend to. We're going to talk about 10 anonymous, unethical judges who have now sat down with NBC and started to run their mouth outside of the appropriate conversational forum where they should have these complaints aired out. Instead, they went and we're going to look at the judicial canons and see exactly what they violated, and then look at another case where this was deemed misconduct, and then ask ourselves why Congress is not doing anything about it at this moment. So we'll go through that. Then we're going to the Supreme Court because we've got a petition for a writ of cert now skidding in there today. And so we're going to go through it. You can see 251 pages, but a lot of that includes the lower level records. And this is coming in from D. John Sauer to the Supreme Court of the United States. And we'll hit it because this is about the trade case. And we know that Trump's appealing this puppy, but now it was in the lower level Court of Appeals. He could go and have a full panel at the Court of Appeals, but now he wants to go to the Supreme Court directly. And so we'll see what's going on. And he's asking them to rule on this expeditiously, very quickly, so that we can get an answer on this, because this trade situation is important to America's financial status. And so we'll go through all of that. Then we'll do some quick updates on Bolton, because we got the search warrant now partially unsealed. And of course, this is the former NSA for Trump, who became very anti-Trump as soon as Trump's like, we're not going to bomb everybody for you, John. You're going to shave your mustache. Anyways, he's got raided. And now we've got the unsealing of the search warrant. We'll go through it. I've got the full thing pulled up here. We'll see what the FBI was looking for and what John Bolton took. All that coming up. Then Lisa Cook, official now, a formal investigation has been launched. And so we'll hit the highlights on all of that. But my friends, it's going to be a great stream. Thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. Thanks for considering becoming members, joining us on the Membo streams, and for supporting all of our work. We are grateful for you. Now, we've got business to attend to today. So let's jump to it. Starting with this situation happening now with these anonymous judges. Anonymous judges violate their ethical obligations and maybe even the judicial code of conduct and the canons that govern their behavior. We're going to go through exactly what they said, and then also take a look at the actual canons and say, oh, this is interesting. Sounds like these judges maybe violated their oaths, violated what their position requires of them, which is to uphold the integrity and the independence of the judiciary, to avoid impropriety, or guess what? Even the appearance of impropriety in all activities, including whining to the press about Trump and the Supreme Court. And the judge should perform the duties fairly, impartially, and diligently. And they didn't do that. And we'll go through the canons and explain exactly what went down. But there was another story of this guy. Now, this is a while ago. You can see 2024, there was another judge who was in a very similar situation. But he wrote an article himself. He published something in the New York Times, and then he got scolded from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, calling that misconduct. So what these other judges have done is they've taken a look at this judge, and they said, well, he can't write articles, I guess. Judge Ponsor is this dude's name. We'll come back to this. But he got sanctioned for this. Now, Judge Ponsor put his name behind it, but these other judges didn't, because in addition, as we're going to see, to committing misconduct pursuant to precedent, in being unethical, in violating their judicial canons, they're also, as we're going to see in this article, legally illiterate. They don't even understand how the system works. Okay, these lower level judges think the Supreme Court, you're going to see this, should have their back, says some judge. I don't know who said that, probably Gia Cobb or Tanya Chutkin or something, but we'll go through it and see what they said. But in addition to all of that unethical, misconduct, legally illiterate, they're also cowardly because they're doing it anonymously. The other guy at least wrote an article about it, and he could have made the claim that, oh, my free speech or whatever, right? Even though you're a judge and you make a voluntary agreement to curtail your speech and just funnel it in the legal system, you know what you signed up for. Now you don't get to go and cry like big babies to NBC News just because you're upset about the Supreme Court? That's not how this works, you whiners. Now, here's what NBC News said. In rare interviews, because it's illegal, essentially, for judges, it is unethical for them to be doing this, they criticize the Supreme Court. Okay, federal judges criticizing the Supreme Court. If you're in any other entity, it's like that's immediate termination, right? You're fired. Get out. You're scolding management. Get out. You're fired. You're done. And these are 10 judges doing this not in their opinions, not making decisions and writing their arguments logically in a dissenting opinion. They're not doing that at all. They're going to NBC and crying like babies. 10 judges tell NBC News the court needs to explain its rulings better because we're too dumb and don't know, with some urging Chief Justice John Roberts to do more to defend the judiciary against external criticism. And stuff like this makes the criticism against the judiciary tenfold, maybe 100-fold. This is pathetic. From federal judges, you used to have some reverence for federal judges. You'd say, wow, they're really amazing people. You get into state court, you go in here, a lot of state courts. You got a federal case? Well, all right, go to the federal courts. It's like real serious business, much bigger building, and a more serious judge. And I've appeared in federal court a handful of times, and it is a different level, or at least it was. Now we're dealing with people who don't even understand how the system works. The Supreme Court doesn't need to defend them for their hack, illegal, unlawful rulings. Anyways, we haven't even started the article yet. And saying, here, federal judges are frustrated with the Supreme Court for increasingly overturning lower courts and their rulings involving the Trump administration. And they say this is undermining the judiciary at a sensitive time. You're undermining the judiciary. There's all these codes of conduct that have been established to preserve the integrity of the judiciary, and they're listed here. We'll come back to them. And you're violating them openly by talking to NBC. Some judges believe the Supreme Court, in particular John Roberts, could be doing more to defend the integrity of their work. Their work has no integrity. Their work is crap. And we've seen that in their reversals time and again. And saying that now we're criticizing them and threats against judges are on the rise. And we always disavow any threats, any violence against anybody, because we can just beat them with words because they are not very good at them, as we can see. And that's our MO. We want to win politically and in the arena of ideas, but this is always a pretext. You can't criticize us because it's dangerous. Oh, we're going to criticize you. Stop violating your duties and stop making rulings that are nationwide injunctions. Stop certifying classes of gangbang and illegal aliens all across our country and then trying to shove it down our throats as it's a constitutional requirement for our citizens to give to these foreign invaders. Some judges believe that Roberts should be doing more. Now, in rare interviews, because this is, of course, unethical, a dozen federal judges who, as I've already said, are committing misconduct, unethical, legally illiterate, and cowards, all of them, appointed by a Democrat and Republican presidents, including Trump, and serving around the country, pointed to a pattern they've seen. They say lower court judges are handed contentious cases involving the Trump administration. They painstakingly research the law to reach their rulings. No, they don't. We've read their opinions. Gia Cobb, I guarantee she's in this one. I think I have her pinned pretty good. And I'd be curious to see, who do you think these judges are? Is it Chutkin, Amir Ali, Gia Cobb? I think she's definitely in there. Those are probably all three in here. So anyways, they say that they are researching the law. We've read it. They're illiterate. When they go against Trump administration officials, they say Trump and allies criticize the judges in harsh terms because you're violating the Constitution. These judges are substituting their judgment for the president's judgment. And we never elected these judges. And they don't have any political accountability to anybody. And Congress is so pathetic and weak that they will not impeach them, regardless of anything, basically. And that's been the history in the country. And this is a pattern of them violating their canons of conduct. And we're seeing it on display. Now, and then the Supreme Court, in emergency rulings, swiftly rejects judges' decisions with little to no explanation. And this is, by the way, this is like not new. Okay, this is standard fare. The Supreme Court doesn't have to baby walk these people down the lane to say, come here, little Judge Gia. Here, let me show you. Here, give her some crayons and some markers, put it up on a whiteboard for her, and diagram this out, John Roberts. Go down to the DC circuit and explain to these idiots how it works. That's not the prerogative. They're supposed to be held to a high standard of being competent federal judges, and they're not. So the reversals on these things that they ignore, by the way, many of them, are perfectly warranted, and they're not entitled to an explanation. You're wrong. It's remanded and reversed, and go fix it. 10 of the 12 judges who spoke with NBC News said the Supreme Court should better explain those rulings, noting that the terse decisions leave lower courts with little guidance or how to proceed. And we've actually made this comment before. We've said, well, the Supreme Court could solve a lot of this stuff right now. They could come back down and just say, all right. Remember, yesterday, we even talked about the Supreme Court kicked it back down to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit came back down and then said, oh, you want us to do the analysis? Fine, we'll do the analysis. And that's part of, the current Supreme Court is very process oriented. They just love everything going, officially through the process, through the appeals. Amy Coney Barrett's a stickler about it. And so this is just the mechanics that they are indulging right now. We're not going to decide, go back down to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, see what that circuit says. We're not going to take away from them and leapfrog them. So I understand why they're doing it. I disagree with it because I want action solved now. And I don't want to wait months on end for appeals to flesh themselves out. The Supreme Court could just say, yeah, here's the due process that gangbangers are entitled to, impose that, and then we can go, then we can start. But Supreme Court has decided not to do that, and they're not required to do that. And they haven't done that historically just because some whiny judges don't understand how the law works. A short rebuttal from the Supreme Court, they say, makes it seem like they did shoddy work and are biased against Trump because it is shoddy work. That's literally the entire logic of the system. Okay, we have a Supreme Court, courts of appeals, district courts. And the lower you are on the rung, the more you have to be checked by your superiors. Okay, it's just basic law. But they're just saying, oh, we did shoddy work. You did. You got reversed. You were out of order. It is, by definition, shoddy, idiots. It is inexcusable. A judge said, one judge is saying this about the Supreme Courts. It is inexcusable. They don't have our backs. What is that? They don't have our backs? What are you, Eric Holder, lunatic? This is ridiculous. The Supreme Court, why would the Supreme Court ever have the back of a wrong federal judge? Okay, and by the way, the Supreme Court has been extremely reserved on this. We finally got Judge Gorsuch to give us a little bit of a break on this, and he came out in a concurring opinion, and he explained, you actually have to follow our rules. We've had 3 different judges in multiple instances who haven't followed our rules after the Supreme Court gave it back down. And now they're complaining. They don't have our backs. That's not how it works. Now, they do have an interest in preserving the legitimacy of the institution of the judiciary. That's without question. But that doesn't mean you preserve the integrity and the legitimacy of the judicial branch by just stamping idiotic, unprecedented decisions that come from hack judges. Like, that's not how you preserve the integrity of this at all. In fact, to do it, the Supreme Court, in my opinion, should come back down harder on these people. They won't, because the Supreme Court doesn't want to, knife themselves. They don't want to knife the judiciary. So they're hoping that these judges will act like adults and act like competent jurists when they're not. And of course, the Supreme Court, I think, has given them a little bit too much benefit of the doubt on that. But that's why Congress must do something. Now, judges are increasingly targeted. Okay, we've always disavowed it. I know. Yeah, you guys didn't cry so much about when Kavanaugh had lunatics outside his house, or when Schumer was screaming, there's going to be a whirlwind coming from you, Gorsuch. Kavanaugh, remember? As of June, the U.S. Marshal Services, yes, we know, when judges issue rulings that Trump doesn't like, they're frequently targeted by influential figures in the MAGA world. Yeah. And sometimes Trump himself, who called for a judge to be impeached. I agree completely. They should be impeached. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller has said the administration is a victim of a judicial coup. It absolutely is. And it doesn't rise to the same level of historical misconduct, accepting a bribe in office, which historically is when Congress has finally said, okay, we'll do it. This is something much more sneaky than that. This is under color of law, abuse of their positions. The judge who said the Supreme Court justices are behaving inexcusably have received threats of violence and is now fearful when someone knocks on the door. Amazon guy's there. This lady's doing a conniption fit. If major efforts are not made to address this, somebody's going to die, says this judge. With tension so high, 4 of the judges says they believe that the Supreme Court, and specifically Roberts, should do more to defend the courts. They say a second judge saying the Supreme Court is effectively assisting the Trump administration in undermining the lower courts. It's ridiculous. You're undermining yourselves, leaving district courts and appeals court judges thrown under the bus. I can't even believe they're talking like that. They sound like children. Why don't you have my back? I mean, we were out there, man, and you just threw me under the bus. Supreme Court has an obligation to explain its rulings in the way the public can understand. We do. We've read them. We get it. These judges don't. A third judge said, adding that when the court so frequently rules for the administration in emergency cases without fully telling people why, it sends a signal. No, we know why. It's because you people who grant the emergency restrictions, these judges, are unlawfully doing that. So they're being reversed. It's not even complicated. But this judge can't figure it out. So this court has had strong left-leaning majorities in the past. But what is different now is the role emergency cases are playing. They said the Supreme Court is effectively endorsing Miller's claim that the judiciary is trying to subvert the presidency. It's almost like the Supreme Court is saying it is a judicial coup, says the judge. It is. And by the way, the Supreme Court hasn't even come close to that. Not even close. So in addition to being unethical, committing misconduct, legally illiterate, and cowardly, they're also just hysterical. Not all judges who were interviewed shared that view, okay? Some were more reluctant to criticize the justices, probably nervous, like we should not even be here. A judge appointed by Obama said that while the Supreme Court could do more to explain itself, some lower court judges had been out of line in blocking Trump's policies. Yeah, well, shout out to that judge. They are out of line. And they're saying that they're being left out to dry. All right, so I just, you can't highlight anything on the NBC website, throws everything out. So the Supreme Court said they're endorsing it. A judge appointed by Obama, of course, we know what he said. Someone said, certainly, there is a strong sense in the judiciary among the judges ruling on these cases that the court is leaving them out to dry. They are partially right to feel that way in the way they feel. So another therapy session today, it sounds like. But the judge added, the whole Trump derangement syndrome is a real issue. Whoa. As a result, judges are mad at what Trump is doing or the manner he is going about those things. They are sometimes forgetting to stay in their lane. I got one sane judge out of the bunch. Still shouldn't have been talking, still should not be doing this. In 2015, a law professor came up with a shadow docket court case concept. Those emergency cases are handled more quickly. Of course, this happens. The Supreme Court's not in session, and the court has to attend to business. And so if you have appeals that land there, then on its face, and they didn't have the power to do what they did. So, you did that? You can't do that. Oh, okay, I can't do that? All right, so now I know. That critique extends back to the Biden administration. And again, the court failed to explain its decisions in 8 out of the 10 wins. Okay, so it's nothing different. It's just how the Supreme Court works. And we see this regularly. Like we go, oh, that's all we got? One petition, cert petition denied. That's it? Yes, it is. That's all. So stop your crying about it, judges. Did you go to law school? Did you ever read Supreme Court denials? Ever? Judges in the trenches need and deserve well-reasoned, bright-line guidance. Yeah, you guys need a lot more than that. Too often today, like, can you please just color this out for me? Can you put it in a paint-by-numbers little coloring book for us, please? A judge said, too often today, sweeping rulings arrive with breathtaking speed but minimal application. That's what you guys do with your injunctions. 10 of the judges, both Republican and Democrats, agreed about the court's lack of explanation. It's a problem because they don't understand. Judges must follow Supreme Court precedent, but they can find it difficult to assess what the justices are asking them to do because they're so dumb. That was the situation when a Maryland-based U.S. District Judge, Matthew Maddox, found himself this year after Trump fired 3 people. Like certain other agencies, he says, you can't do this. How dare you? And the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court is waiting for, and this happens all the time. Sorry about that. The Supreme Court is always waiting for a bunch of issues to materialize so they can just handle it once. And they're waiting for that. We're percolating right to it right now. And so the judge is trying to figure it out. And there is, like, that's part of being a judge, is you have to try to, find the outcome. It's not complicated. She referred to a different case, and even Kagan's complaining about this. Kagan noted that the case raised issues, and she penned the dissent. And so here's some more. You see Trump's winning, a lot of these dismissed as moot. And this is the Boasberg case, the JGG case, Amir Ali, the AIDS case, and Bessent Dellinger, I forget where that was. Was that Howell? Dismissed as moot. But there is no unanimity about the issue. Can Trump fire these people? And we're going to have that battle now, especially as it comes up to the Supreme Court. Here's another judge. They said the judge suggested the Supreme Court should say, let's be clear, it's not some crazy opinion, and this judge is not a monster. Wow. So that's what this judge wants the Supreme Court justices to say? They want John Roberts to write at the top of his opinion. This judge is not some crazy opinion, and this judge is not a monster. Okay, they're 8 years old. As a Chief Justice, Roberts, he has a dual role. He's issued rare statements. He does defend the judiciary. He doesn't seek public attention. Judges aren't supposed to be seeking media. John Roberts did not respond to a request for comment. Now, another district court indicated that it was counterproductive to criticize Roberts or the court. The judiciary as a whole is under attack. We need to be united, not divided, said this judge who was giving an unethical interview to NBC News anonymously, cowardly, is saying. You need to be united? Okay. Now, Roberts did not respond to a request for comment. And you don't speak out. Yeah, there are reasons why Roberts not speaking. If he did, the employee said, the force of what he said would be diluted. Litigation is pending, right? It changes the whole structure, which is why judges are supposed to keep it to themselves. That's why we've got canons for it. The Chief Justice can't be the public spokesman against the administration and still do his job. Can't do it. That's why Congress needs to act. The Supreme Court really can't do it to themselves because they've got this thing called legitimacy that they have to care about. So if they start attacking their lower level judges and shredding them in opinions, which was completely improper when Amy Coney Barrett and Sotomayor did it to the Fifth Circuit and the Texas judges, but it's something that they are reticent to do. The Chief Justice can't do it, so Congress must step up. So far, the only recent public defense from the court has come from Kavanaugh, who's saying the court has been doing more and more process to try to get the right answer. And, they're all trying to figure out what's coming next. Judges have called for increased security, blah, blah, blah. Here's another one. The judge said, if the entire foundation falls out from under your house, it does no good to have a really well-insulated attic. Stupid metaphor. It sure would be nice if someone had our backs from the federal judges. Honestly, these are some of the most pathetic people. I have so much contempt for this. Whining about stuff that they're not even entitled to. It's honestly pathetic. Like, the judiciary should be ashamed of themselves. And I hope that Congress investigates this aggressively and starts to impeach these judges, because I think this is misconduct. In fact, here is another order. This was in a judicial complaint, and I'd love to get who were the judges that NBC talked to? What were their names? Why are they so cowardly? At least this judge on May 24th wrote a New York Times article. Okay, this judge, Judge Ponsor, put his name on it. He was a senior judge, a senior federal judge out in Massachusetts. And he published an essay in the newspaper. He said, a federal judge wonders, how could Alito have been so foolish? Okay, so a lower level judge talking smack and garbage against the Supreme Court judge. Exactly what happened in the NBC case. All talking garbage. Now, the act, so somebody filed a judicial complaint against him, and we don't have the names of these judges to file judicial complaints against them because they're cowards. The act provides an administrative remedy they say, okay, well, now we have an act, okay? Congress passed this act called the Judicial Conduct and Disability Act. And this judge is now being processed for his complaint in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, saying the act says that there is a remedy for judicial conduct that is prejudicial to the effective and the expeditious administration of the business of the courts. After reviewing the complaint and conducting some limited inquiry, this judge says, I now conclude that this judicial complaint set forth based on the reasons below I now conclude this judicial complaint because the appropriate corrective action has been taken. Let's see what it was. Now, this judicial complaint was originally filed in the First Circuit. All right, now in a background. In his essay, this guy, Judge Ponsor, he addressed the flying of an upside down American flag and an appeal to heaven flag outside the homes of Alito, the flag case. He wrote, any judge with reasonable ethical instincts would have recognized that the flag displays were improper because they could be perceived as a banner of allegiance on partisan issues that could or could be before the court. Now, acknowledging the flags, that the fact that the flags were flown by Alito's wife, he offered a hypothetical about his own marriage. He stated, well, if my wife had publicly expressed her views, I would have to recuse myself because of the appearance of partiality. The judge said in his essay, although the Supreme Court recently adopted an ethics code, basic ethics should not rely on laws or regulations, okay? It should be folded into the judge's DNA, and that didn't happen here. So in his judicial complaint, the person who complained about this judge said his essay went well beyond the bounds of appropriate judicial speech. And although he concedes the judge did not refer to any pending cases, complainant asserts that reasonable people could view the essay as calling for Judge Alito's recusal from the J6 cases that were pending before the Supreme Court at the time. And this recusal concept, I think, should apply to all of these 12 judges. What are their names? There needs to be a congressional subpoena to NBC. Who are these judges? What are their names? Because they're still presiding over cases, presumably, that the Trump administration is in their court on. And so we need to know who they are so that Trump can find out who to file motions to recuse on so they can get off his cases. Complaint characterizes Judge Ponsor's essay as highly inappropriate, baseless, prejudicial political speech against one judge against another judge inside. Like, you can't be attacking yourself. That's what you get reversed on. You be like gentlemen, not like babies. Kiss my back. You threw me on the bus. Saying, in reviewing this complaint, I considered the ethical canons that apply to federal judges, as well as the code of conduct. Now, while judges are encouraged to engage in extrajudicial activities, they must be mindful of their obligations to uphold the integrity and the independence of the judiciary, okay? To avoid impropriety and even the appearance of impropriety, and to refrain from making public comments on the merits of pending matters. Now, specifically, the canons, and you can review all of them. They are all online, uscourts.gov, all listed here, along with their developments over the years. But the court is going to walk us through them. And this case, I think, is very paralleled to the NBC cowardly judges. Here they say, uphold the integrity and the independence of the judiciary. A judge should act in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity and the impartiality of the judiciary. They have not done that. They've actually said the Supreme Court is lacking integrity. Officially, they've said that the Supreme Court feels like they don't have our back and they're throwing us under the bus and they're favoring the Trump administration. Canon 3A provides a judge should not make a public comment on the merits of a matter or matters pending or impending in any court. And they were talking about cases. They were talking about Humphrey's executor and all these other cases, saying we don't, and I want to know, what did those judges say in these interviews with NBC? Were they talking about cases? We have no idea. But if we knew their names, we would know, and we would know what cases they were talking about, and then they could be recused from those cases because of their clear bias. Canon 4 states, a judge can do extrajudicial activities. They can speak, they can write, they can lecture, they can talk about a bunch. But Canon 4 cautions them that a judge should not participate in extrajudicial activities like talking to the press, whining to them, that detract from the dignity of the judge's office, or interfere with the performance of the judge's duties, or reflect adversely on the judge's impartiality, leads to frequent disqualification, and is a problem. Now, according to the Code of Conduct, they also caution there, a judge should act at all time in a manner that promotes public confidence and impartiality. They didn't do that here. Engaging in law-related extrajudicial activities where the activity is political in nature is fraught with risks for judges. And the committee advised that all of this is to preserve the dignity of the office. Now, the principal question here, in some analysis, we know what the rules are, is whether this judge who wrote the article violated those canons. Did this publication diminish the confidence in the integrity and the independence of the judiciary? Could some of the statements in the essay be viewed by the public as commentary on partisan issues or a call for Alito's recusal? The answer to all three is yes. Now, although Posner is in a unique position to contribute to the law, the essay was expressing personal opinions, just like the NBC judges, on controversial public issues, and it criticized the ethics of a sitting Supreme Court judge. The comments diminished the public's confidence in the integrity and the independence of the federal judiciary, and furthermore, the political implications and the undertones of the essay, because the Supreme Court doesn't have our back when we're fighting against dictator Trump. That also violated a canon, 3A6, a prohibition on publicly commenting on the merits of a pending matter. And we don't even know if they've got pending matters. I would bet they do, because there's a billion lawsuits going on. I accept that the essay never referenced any actual pending Supreme Court cases, and I acknowledge that his statement attached in the letter did not have any particular case in mind, but viewed in the time frame in which this was published, he's talking about January 6 cases, and we all know that. After determining that misconduct occurred, boom, right there, a cognizable misconduct has occurred. A chief judge may conclude that a complaint may conclude a complaint proceeding if the subject judge has undertaken voluntary corrective action and acknowledges and remedies the problem. And this corrective action may be voluntarily undertaken by a specific judge, right? Because they are very easy on themselves. And so pursuant to the rules, I communicated with Judge Ponsor about this matter, and I wanted to get his response and provide him with a conversation. And he was at all times respectful of the judicial complaint process, responsive to the concerns raised by his essay, and reflective in addressing the attached letter, and he apologizes for the violations of the Code of Conduct. I'm satisfied with his public letter of apology. I think it constitutes a voluntary corrective action, and so accordingly, this judicial complaint is concluded because it's all been resolved. All right, so again, Albert Diaz, Chief Judge, and we know, like, they don't care. They don't get in trouble. They know that they're basically immune. Okay, this is the same thing as cops investigating themselves and finding they did nothing wrong. Or the FBI, same thing, right? Oh yeah, we're gonna open up 7 leak investigations because we're leaking like a sieve. Can't find anything. Can't identify any leaks out of 7 separate opened investigations because they're so dumb or corrupt. We know. But we see this filing here, and it is, I think, in a nice parallel to this article. The key point is it's misconduct, and they're talking to the press about this, and we don't even know who they are, which is what makes this especially egregious. What cases are still in their courts that they're so complaining about? Where are they standing together? Is this a judicial coup? Because they certainly make it seem like that. We're going to stand together, they all said. All right. Against the Constitution? That's why the judiciary is getting criticized. It's because we've got incompetent, cowardly judges in there who are undermining the entire sanctity of the system. And it's a real shame to see. One party, one branch of government can correct this. It's Congress, and they're not doing anything. So hopefully somebody over there wakes up on the Judiciary Committee and starts talking about this in seriousness and make it happen so that there is skin in the game, there's consequences for their malfeasance. We're going to keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now, with all of that background on how corrupt our judges are, let's go to the Supreme Court. President Trump and the DOJ now racing to the Supreme Court, asking for an expedited ruling on this. They say, can you decide this immediately? Because if you don't, there's going to be serious consequences here. Now, this is the case, of course, of VOS selections. This is the tariff case, and we're now in the Supreme Court of the United States. The last time we picked up on this case, Trump had just lost, and we were asking the question in the Court of Appeals, were we going to go to a full panel of the Court of Appeals, because it was just a 2-1 decision from the lower level judges, and we're not there. Now we just went directly to the Supreme Court. And this is coming out from D. John Sauer. You remember him from a bunch of the Trump litigation. And now we've got questions about the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and we're going to get into it as we scroll on into the meat and potatoes, past the table of contents and authorities and cases. This is Supreme Court, baby. So it's all dialed. Here's what we've got. Now, this case, Supreme Court, addresses the validity of the administration's most significant and economic and foreign policy initiative. It's the tariffs. Trump, the president, duly elected, has determined that tariffs are necessary to rectify America's country-killing trade deficits and stem the flood of fentanyl across our borders. And so, in January 2025, the United States faced enormous, persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits, 1.2 trillion per year. And the president, who talked about this, he perceived that this had hollowed out our domestic manufacturing, wrecked our industrial base, and more. And these are catastrophic. Our domestic supply chains are vulnerable. And this is because our trade agreements have been asymmetric. And so the president, Trump, and his most senior advisors recognize this, and it's a problem. They're saying we're on the brink of major economic and national catastrophe. Our country's being hollowed out. Exercising the president's broad discretion under the law, the IEEPA, which Congress gave to him, he regulated importation of foreign goods. The law says he can do it, so he did it. And he can deal with any unusual and extraordinary threat, both quotes, and if it's addressing national security and foreign policy or the U.S. economy. Wow, right? Congress, which was originally granted the tariff power, delegated it over to the executive branch because Congress doesn't know anything about tariffs or, set them, adjust them. They're terrible. So they just delegated it. Now the president is using the power. Trump declared a national emergency. He imposed tariffs. The president has determined that those tariffs and the ensuing trade negotiations are pulling America back from the precipice. Now, due to the tariffs, 6 major trading partners and the 27-nation European Union have already entered into framework deals with the United States, heavily recalibrated, and we're now, they're saying, going to be making $2 trillion of purchases from us and investments in our community. And in addition to that, Trump also recently authorized tariffs against India because of the purchasing of Russian energy products. And so this is a sanction on the war with Ukraine, right? And so does the president not have the power to do that? Why are the liberals not screeching about that? Like, they love Ukraine, Ukraine flags everywhere. So how come they're not thrilled with Trump's tariffs on India? And the Congressional Budget Office projected the tariffs will reduce federal deficits by $4 trillion. And of course, they hate that. They love deficits. So the stakes in this case, Supreme Court, could not be higher. The president and his cabinet have determined that the tariffs are promoting peace and unprecedented economic prosperity, and that denial of tariff authority would expose our nation to trade retaliation without effective defenses and thrust America back into the brink of economic catastrophe. Now, to the president and his most senior advisors, these tariffs thus present a stark choice. With tariffs, we are a rich nation. Without tariffs, we are a poor nation. According to Trump 1 year ago, the United States was dead, but now we're back. But nonetheless, in a fractured, 7-4 decision, so my apologies, it wasn't just a small panel, it was the full panel. The en banc Federal Circuit declared tariffs unlawful. That's right. I remember we read through that one. I think we read the dissent on that one from the Obama judge. The decision cast a pall of uncertainty upon ongoing foreign negotiations that Trump has already engaged in. And so we need the Supreme Court to enter a swift resolution on this case. Writing, the Federal Circuit did not question, and it's the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. It's the Tariffs Court, which is a little bit unusual. And the Federal Circuit did not rule out that he could regulate the importations of foreign goods that might authorize some tariffs. Okay, they said you do have the ability to regulate some tariffs, but they said that you can't regulate these tariffs because these tariffs are too big, and we never thought that you were going to actually do it. and enduring to fall within the bounds. They say, well, I mean, it's like a pretty big deal. So like, we disagree with it. We think it's a big deal. And so Congress, we think you should go talk to Congress before we'll allow you to do this. Excuse me. Congress already passed the rules. Is he in the bounds of the law or not? It sounds like he is in the bounds. You just have a problem with the scope of it, of the effect of the lawful act. The lawful act is inside the law. The effects are just beyond their imagination. I can't believe a president's actually doing something that's good for America. Golly. As Judge Taranto's dissent recognized, that reasoning is profoundly wrong. It contradicts the plain text, the court cases, the statutory history. They delegated this to the president, and the president has used it forever. Now, by contrast, the Court of Appeals majority, they came up with an atextual, it's just kind of some but not others theory of when tariffs are allowed. But there's no metrics for judging anything. Do tariffs last too long? Do they bring in too much money? Do they cover too many countries? Do they become too effective for the court's liking, right? Basically. So the IEEPA does not empower federal judges to perversely declare tariffs unlawful at some judicially discerned point when they achieve too much. There is nothing new or suspect about the broad delegation of powers. Okay, Congress gave it to the president. They have long supplemented the Article 2 powers many times over. But the decision below eviscerates a critical tool for addressing emergencies through fuzzy reasoning that improperly transforms the court and the judges into foreign policy referees, and they're not. Though the Federal Circuit has stayed its mandate, pending this court's review, so it hasn't gone into effect yet, its decision has jeopardized ongoing negotiations. And if left undisturbed, Supreme Court, this decision would unilaterally disarm the United States and allow other nations to hold America's economy hostage. And so you should expedite this, hear this very quickly, and resolve it. Now, they continue. They say for over a century, Congress has given the president broad powers. The court has repeatedly upheld this presidential authority. They did it in 1813. They did it in 1892. They did it again and again and again. In 1928, they did it. Congress has since enacted many other statutes to modify these things. We had a Trade Act, 1974. We had a 1917 Act. In fact, in 1971, Nixon imposed peacetime tariffs, and those were upheld under the authorities too. But now it's all Trump. In 1976 and 77, Congress modified the rules. Congress gave itself oversight authority about national emergencies and more. And the IEEPA separated authority. Are we in war? Are we in peace? Congress limited this to periods of declared wars. Then the IEEPA came out and extended the authority when there are national emergencies, which is what we're using now. Now, the broad powers that are granted are essentially the same as under the TWEA. Okay, so kind of like two areas of empowerment, one for war, one for civil. And this authorizes the president when he says there is an emergency. Now, once the president declares a national emergency, then he gets broad powers. And again, if Congress doesn't like it, they can impeach the president or pass a bill, pass some law. They're not idiots who can just, not do anything. They actually have some agency, guys. You can do more than just writing letters. If you're so upset about this, well, the people can let their representatives know, and then Congress can respond to the president and modify the tariff power, right? But they're not doing it because this is a judicial coup. It's not the will of the people at all. The will of the people was to elect Trump, to right these imbalances, and that's what we're doing. But the judges are preventing him from doing it. They're obstructing and committing an insurrection under color of law. Congress also gave itself oversight authority, and they're overseeing things. Now, in early 25, Trump came in. He declared a national emergency. Boom, Mexico, Canada, PRC. You're all getting hit. Contraband for Mexico and Canada. Reciprocal tariffs came in. You tariff us, we're tariffing you. Those all took effect. Soon after the imposition of tariffs, more than 75 trading partners came back out. They wanted to start negotiating. And they have produced historic reciprocal trade deals with a ton of people. UK, who's locking up anti-trans comedians, the European Union, Japan, Republic of North Korea, the Philippines, and more. Now, in contrast, After extensions of the 90-day pause, the president found that some trading partners offered terms that do not sufficiently address imbalances, and now he's setting tariff rates differently. And so respondents or plaintiffs who are suing, they say, you can't tariff us. Who do you think you are, the president? What do you think, you have the law on your side? They say it doesn't authorize anything. They say it doesn't authorize the drug tariffs and more. Now, sitting on bonk, the Federal Circuit in a 7-4 decision, so the full panel, the declaratory relief but vacated, affirmed the relief, vacated the injunction, remanded. Then the court held that the IPA did not authorize the challenged tariffs. And the Court of Appeals went through their analysis. We talked about a lot of it. Now, Judge Taranto filed the dissent, and we read that. It was a good one. He explained that the plain meaning of regulate importation, like what does it say? It says regulate importation. Oh, okay. So that means you can regulate the importation. It includes the authority to impose tariffs, and that the omission of, quote, additional limits simply reflects that this is an open-eyed congressional grant, right? In other words, Congress, if they wanted to add limits to this, they wrote the law. They could just put it in there. There are no limits, Judge. The Federal Circuit stated its mandate, and so you should grant this now, Supreme Court. This decision below jeopardizes tariffs that Trump has determined are necessary for the country. And they're a textual case, which means it's not based on text. It's not based on law. It's just made up out of this concept of like this living, breathing constitutional jurisprudence that they think is how it works. Like there are judges that think that way. Given the obvious importance of the scope of this authority, we ask that you grant a writ of certiorari and reverse the judgment below. Giving us some more details, lots of legal stuff, going through some cases and explaining that case. The Court of Appeals also thought interpreting regulating importation would mean that they could regulate every activity. I said, no, stop overreading it too. Okay, now you're reading more power into it that doesn't exist, obviously. So the Court of Appeals, bunch of cases. You can see lots of cases happening here, back and forth. And let's see where else this goes. So we should be getting deal with. All right, let's see. All right, I think we got the gist of this one because there's a couple other things that I wanted to hit too. Let's see. Oh, this is good. The Congressional Budget Office projection indicates this is going to reduce deficits by $4 trillion. And this is going to rank amongst the most consequential programs whose legality the court has been asked to review in years and say, okay, so that is the full filing up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And then we've got, it looks like, the lower level ruling from the circuit court. Now, that's not the only document that was filed because they're also submitting a declaration from Scott Bessent, and they want to expedite this quickly. They say, look, we also, in a separate request, Supreme Court, we request that you expedite the resolution of this case as fast as you can, given the enormous importance of quickly confirming the full legal standing of the presidential tariffs. We need this swiftly settled. The en banc Federal Circuit, in their erroneous decision, has disrupted highly impactful, sensitive, ongoing trade negotiations and casting doubt over the president's efforts. Now, as Scott Bessent explains, the ruling is unlawful. And he submitted that all below. We'll take a look at it. Now, to that end, the government has proposed that the court adopt a schedule. We need answers by September 10th. And upon a grant, we want expedited consideration as quickly as possible. They threw out some dates saying, please address this quickly, signed by D. John Sauer. And here's the declaration from the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, Senate-confirmed position, who is working under a duly elected American president, exercising powers that Congress has given to them unequivocally. He writes, I am the Secretary of Treasury. The statements made here are based on my personal knowledge, and I am confirming that this decision that invalidates the trade deals raises legal uncertainty about those tariffs, undermine the president's ability to conduct real-world diplomacy, and we need a swift review to prevent the threatening of U.S. strategic interests, saying the United States has suffered trade imbalances for many decades at the hands of its major trading partners, and their imposition of asymmetrical, higher tariffs on us than we impose on them. So Trump and his senior advisors said, all right, we're at the tipping point, enough of this, that we're at the brink. and we need an emergency action on this. And so they committed it. In addition to the frameworks already reached, we've got a bunch of deals. Now what the lower court is doing is going to reverse all of that. This court's ruling is taking away substantial negotiating leverage for Trump to get the best trade deals for the American people. And the longer this is delayed, the greater risk of economic disruption, okay? The courts are going to wreck the economy. For example, delaying a ruling until June 2026 could result in a scenario in which $750 billion to $1 trillion in tariffs have already been collected. It's going to unwind all of those numbers. And so the frameworks for these are already in place. And I also got a letter from a 26-year-old victim of fentanyl homicide, right? So also the drugs are coming in, and that's also another emergency. It remains vital to foreign policy that we reverse this decision as swiftly as possible, signed by Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. All right, so that's over at the Supreme Court. Here's the docket. Let's see if there's any new activity since we just looked at it. And no, we're up to speed. We got the 2 filings here. Supreme Court being asked to rule on this very quickly, and we hope that they do. And we hope that they interpret it appropriately, just according to the text of the law. It's not even complicated. And the president can do it. Congress doesn't like it. They can impeach him. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now, couple updates elsewhere. Let's talk about John Bolton. He's probably not happy about this. John Bolton and his search warrant now partially unsealed. We'll take a look at it and ask ourselves, what did you have hiding in there, John? We'll see if the FBI will tell us. But here is what got unsealed. So the press came in and they were filing motions. They were saying, can you please unseal part of this so we can read it? The court came out and said, yes, we can. Pursuant to the reasons submitted by the press, the court hereby does unseal the proposed redacted versions of the search warrant signed by Timothy Sullivan, U.S. Magistrate Judge, out in Zenesville in Maryland, which another Judge Zenas. Now, that is the unsealing. Here is what we've got. So this was the search warrant application. Someone calls this puppy in and he says, look at attachment A. We'll look at. He says, here's what we want. Evidence of a crime, contrabands, fruits of a crime, or anything else illegally possessed, and property designed for use or involved in committing a crime. Look at the attached sheet, signed off by redacted agent name, over with the FBI. August 21st, 2025, Judge Timothy Sullivan signs off on that from Maryland. Now, the government submitted a motion to seal, right? When they get an application for a warrant, they want to seal everything until the warrant is executed. Then they unseal things and we can read them. And here we got it. So the affidavit submitted, they said, needs to be sealed because when they filed this, right, this was back on the original filing. We'll see it down here. We don't see it. 21st day of August. Okay, so yeah. So they submitted all this right before the search warrant is executed, and then it gets unsealed. So disclosure of the affidavit at this time could seriously jeopardize the investigation. We haven't executed the warrant yet. And so the procedures for sealing this are all appropriate. The judge, of course, sealed it, and it is sealed. Now, the press came out, unsealed it, and we get some more information. So once again, there's the warrant. Here is what they got from John Bolton's house. One red iPhone with 2 camera lenses for his interviews or something else. One black phone in a black case. A white binder labeled Statements and Reflections to Allied Strikes. I don't even know what that was. His like little journal about bombings. Typed documents in folders labeled Trump 1 through 4. I wonder what those were. 4 boxes containing printed daily activities. All right. 1 hard drive, a Seagate brand. 1 Dell Precision Tower computer, 3620. 1 SanDisk hard drive, 64 gigabyte USB. 64 gigabyte USB, another Dell XPS laptop with cables, another Inspiron Dell computer, all signed off on as being collected. And that's what they got. Here is what they wanted to get or submitted in their application. Redacted. The target residence is a resident located at that address, and it is a something. All of that is redacted there. We get a little bit. Here's what they want to seize. All items that are in possession of John Robert Bolton II. All physical documents and records with or without classification markings that relate to his former position as the assistant to the president for the NSA, National Security Affairs. That. Redacted. Along with any containers or boxes or other contents that are stored together. They want all information, including communications relating to national defense, any digital devices that may contain the following: any digital device encoding, docking, scanners, magnetics, electronics, CDs, DVDs, any documentations that are digital devices, includes routers, iPods, GPS, everything. If it looks like an electronic, they want it. Any applications, utility programs, interpreters, other software used to facilitate anything, any physical keys, encryption devices, dongles, passwords, test keys, all the things. They also want emails and anything electronically stored. Who used, owned, or stored the digital device? Usernames, passwords, email, contacts, chats, instant messaging logs. Evidence about all of this must be turned over. Any counter-forensic programs we want to know. All evidence of the times that the digital device was used. Any other electronic accounts, basically everything. You get it. So it continues on. They also want passports, communications, information about identities, who else conspired, records of IP addresses, cookies, anything bookmarked or favorited. And the list goes on. It also authorizes the search and forensic analysis of electronic devices containing the foregoing evidence if the electronic devices are found within rooms known to be or used by Bolton. A person inside the premises advises officers executing the warrant that they were used by Bolton, and officers reasonably believe the device was used in connection with the categories. Now, with respect to any other electronic devices that are used by Bolton, law enforcement are also authorized to press and swipe the fingers and the thumbs of Bolton. Okay, so the warrant says, yep, put the finger on there and open it up. They can also hold the device in front of the face of Bolton and activate the facial recognition feature for the purposes of unlocking it. So if you don't want that to happen, you use a key code. With respect to the search of any of the items described above, which are stored in the form of magnetic or any other electronic formats, we want them. Anything scanned, anything opened. We want a review of all the electronic storage media and more. We'll do a check to see if anything is, privileged, and that's it. So John Bolton had some material seized, and, it's a nice list of stuff there. This one's curious. Statements and reflections to Allied strikes. It's like his poetry about bombing people. Great. So that's the latest on John Bolton. We'll see if criminal charges come later down the line. Thank you for joining us as we do. All right, we got one more update, and then we'll hear from you and see what you say about all of this. Here is this one. It's official. Lisa Cook, now the subject of an opened DOJ criminal investigation. You see, the Wall Street Journal had the exclusive on this, and they said the probe is now discovered. Says that it centers on her fraudulent mortgage applications, explaining that the DOJ has in fact opened this thing up, and they're even issuing subpoenas out to determine what went down with her. Now, the initial scrutiny was on the property of Ann Arbor, and other investigators are using grand juries as part of the probe. So lots is happening. The investigation comes on the heels of 2 criminal referrals from Bill Pulte, who has publicly alleged that Cook committed mortgage fraud. Now, Cook's lawyer, Abby Lowell, didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, and a Justice Department spokesperson also declined to comment. Cook filed a lawsuit. She said, I can't be fired. She said, you concocted all of this, and We're familiar with the case, but that's all we got, essentially. So not much more information on the investigation. We know about the accusations. And they say it's not a big deal. Okay, a 2023 report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philly found that 1/3 of single-family home investors misrepresent their occupancy status on their mortgage applications. Wow. So it's the everybody's doing it defense. You're on the Federal Reserve, lady. Don't act like you are just, an innocent individual who can not have your finances dialed in and then expect to have faith in your ability to manage national finances. Give us a break. All right, so we got a couple other reactions here. Bill Pulte shared this one. He said, wow, even the Brookings Institution is now even calling out the Fed's cover-up, saying they have no credibility with Lisa Cook. They better get rid of her. This is the same outfit that Democrat hack Norm Eisen works for. Wow. Okay. And they're defending her. Here's what this exchange sounded like.
The Fed's ethics scandals have piled up a mountain high, and the Fed has frankly lost credibility for years, sweeping ethics scandal after ethics scandal of senior official under the rug. So it's very difficult to have any confidence in the Fed's honesty and transparency about what's going on with Cook, who they won't even acknowledge whether Cook is a governor or not today, why Kugler left, and a series of other scandals. And the Fed is really kind of eating a little bit of what they've sown by trying to cover up their own dirty laundry for years.
So quickly, I just want to get your thoughts on where Congress and specifically the Senate factors into all of this, because we've got more than 140 presidential picks as of the beginning of this week awaiting floor action. And if we're talking about the Fed composition, not to mention some of these other administration specific appointments, that is lawmakers that are going to decide ultimately who gets the green light and who doesn't. And we also know that there's laws that are potentially, or I guess rules within the Senate that are potentially going to change around all of this too.
Yeah, look, a lot of nominees have been slaved to the traffic light of the Senate floor, and it's been flashing red. On the other hand, Senate nominees can be moved quickly through the floor if a majority of Republicans. So the fate of the Fed really rests in the hands of 4 Senate Republicans who need to stand up to President Trump and say, we're not going to do this until you nominate people who will be independent.
Okay, so I guess his thesis is that Lisa Cook was independent. We know what her background and her pedigree was, so we've got our doubts about that. Now, here is another one from Bill Pulte. He had a great full interview on with CNBC today. It's like 15 minutes long. Here's just a short snippet, though, of what he was saying, because people are criticizing. They're saying, you're attacking her. How dare you single her out? She maybe committed a crime, but you shouldn't look into her, which is interesting because that's not how they felt about anybody who was on the other side of the aisle when they had the prosecutorial power in their hands.
You're not, I don't think your primary role at what you're doing now is to seek out and find mortgage fraud.
That's completely false. That's completely false, Joe. That's completely false. My job, and I swore an oath before the Senate and otherwise, that I would root out mortgage fraud and that I would ensure that there's safety and soundness in the mortgage market.
The idea is that it might be one-sided.
Joe, I got to finish.
Okay. All right,
I got to finish. In 2008, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act was passed and gave enormous authority to this position in which I sit. It didn't happen by accident. There was a housing crash. A big part of the reason that there was a housing crash was because people were buying mortgages and engaging in mortgage fraud. So I'm not going to be intimidated from pursuing mortgage fraud just because somebody has the special title of being a Fed governor. This is my job to ensure the safety and soundness of the mortgage market. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat or a Fed governor or somebody who mans a convenience store. If you commit mortgage fraud, you need to be held accountable, period.
All right, my friends, so that's Bill Pulte, and he's absolutely right. They do need to be held accountable. And he's leading the way, so we're happy to see it. Formal investigation now open. And the big question is still open, which is she exercising any power? Is she acting as a governor? We know that there's a meeting coming up with them. Will she be there if we don't have a resolution on this? We'll keep our eye on it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and joining as we do. All right, what a beautiful day it has been, my friends. Happy Thursday. Thank you for being here and for jumping in the chat. Let's see what's cooking over on Locals and YouTube. I think I saw a couple new membos joining us, which is amazing. Thank you for bringing in new membos, our friends. And we got a couple of donos today. Oh, we got membos coming in from Mock Schnell and more. What's up? Tony Hay Munkets is joining us. What a beautiful day it is. All right, we're getting queued up here, my friends. Sheila Pooh is in the house. And here we go. It's almost Friday from Garfield. Man, I used to read a lot of Garfield. I like comics. I like Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield. I like Dilbert, actually. Didn't know anything about business, but I like Dilbert. What's up, Scott Adams? All good stuff. Shout out to Garfield. And shout out to this guy. Who else but John is here? John McGarvey, bringing in 5 new members. Thank you, John, for doing that. Christian Jedi Knight. What's up, Snickle Fritz? A little darker in the house. Howie Brown and Streaky, all gifted membos by who else but John. Good to see you, John. Thank you for the new membos, my man. And for mounting the fort down for us, we got Chubby says, you know, after this anonymous interview and blatant misconduct and violation of their oaths of office, Congress better start doing what's necessary to curb this now. SCOTUS should speak up too. I'll honestly be shocked if either does anything, though. Yeah, you're right. Nothing's going to happen. I know. It sucks, doesn't it? Chevy says, if these judges were actually qualified for their positions and actually followed the rules and laws, they wouldn't need further clarifications, and there'd be a lot less reversals. Yeah, just, it's like, you don't have to have a real thorough explanation when you're obviously wrong. You're like, you just crashed your car into a tree. Do you need to explain why that's bad? Because you just did that. You're burning the Constitution. You can't do that. What else do you need to know? Stop it. This one, Michael Roby in the house. What's up, Michael? Welcome aboard, Michael Roby. We're going to have a members-only after party today, so come and join us, Michael Roby. Thanks for joining up. Hey, we got this one from Chubby. These judges are the same people that complained to the dean when a teacher gave them a low score on an essay or a test. Yeah, I thought we had something special here. How come you're testing me? How come you're governing me or, employing me and guiding me? Michael Roby, I'm sure one of those anonymous judges was Boasberg. Yeah, I don't know if it was. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I have a hard time believing that he would do that, but maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's like a chief judge. He was, up. Like, would he go talk to NBC and cry? Would he? Is he that pathetic? Probably. Biology always wins. What's up? 1 month as a membo. Thank you. Biology always wins. It's true. It's a real thing. I officially give you 50,000 out of 5 stars. Man, that's a lot. It's like it's a big multiple. Well, we appreciate that. Biology always wins. We'll take it, man. We'll take it. We'll put all 50,000 of those right on our refrigerator. Duber, what's up? I think judges are being babies because of grade inflation in higher ed. They are used to only getting A's and cannot handle just being told wrong. That's probably true. Yeah, I mean, I think that the quality of our federal judiciary has gone into the toilet. And we also have a ton of foreign-born judges in our federal courts, many of whom were appointed by Joe Biden. So how can they come in here and then suddenly tell us about our Constitution? And I don't just mean like they were foreign-born and came here at 4 years old. We got like a foreign-born judge who was like a Canadian judge like 10 minutes ago. So it's very frustrating to then have them come into our country and then lecture us, Judge Amir Ali, thinking about him in particular, about our Constitution and about how Trump is undermining it because he's not giving out $50 billion to his Democrat friends. It's disgusting. So thank you for that, Dubert. Sheila the Pooh, 1,000,000 hugs to you, Sheila. How nice of you. 20 membos coming in. Uft STFU is here. Welcome. Courtesy of Sheila Pooh. Victor Man, Kyle L, Oklahoma Chicken Cam. What's up, Brian Deason? Road Trek Girl. SV Vintage is here. Becky Bridges, Allison Grotkin. Welcome. Joe Mitchell, Mark Clemens, Michelle MR, Grace Ann Giordano. What's up, TG? Suzanne Franzen, aka Simply Susan. Welcome, Simply Susan. We got Tyler Lees, LR Marhan, Thad the Man, and Matthew, all gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. Sheila, thank you for that. Yeah, I just noticed that too. I just realized the numbers are gone from our names. I'm noticing that too. Okay, so I think like YouTube reverted that. Once again, we changed nothing. We changed nothing. But I've noticed that, like, the names were a lot easier to read today, and it was much appreciated. So thank you, YouTube, for fixing it. Chubby, well, this gives NBC a big chance to start to earn back some respect and show they're unbiased, as they keep claiming, and name these judges. It won't happen, but it's still a nice thought. Yeah, I know, it will never happen. I think Congress should subpoena them still. And they'll, well, First Amendment privileges, news collection, and they won't give them, but they should still get a subpoena for them. Mock Schnell, 20 new membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell. You're amazing. Thank you, Mock Schnell. Look at this. We got 20 friends coming in. Sue Bryant, Steve Dubois. We got Mitchell J, Richard Brookins, Beers and BS. Welcome. Ron Jones, John O. We got Red Torch Designs, Simon BB in the house. Raven Moon, Jeffrey Phillips, Andrew Silverworth, Dustin Van Pelt. What's up, Normie American? Cheryl G. Kenneth Wright, we got Lori Anderson, Surfing Bird, Rotten in Denmark, and Jill Kelly. All gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell. Mock Schnell, very nice of you to do that. Thank you. And welcome 20 new membo friends. See you in a minute at the after party. Chubby says, Trump and the administration should petition SCOTUS to drop all current cases due to this huge miscarriage of justice and show of blatant bias by a cadre of judges who are all unifying. Why don't they have our back? Was there a solidarity statement in there? Did they say, like, we're going to stand together? What was that? Together. Was it just, did I just kind of envision that? All right, I'll have to read it again. But I thought that they received, if any effort, somebody's going to die. Did somebody say we're going to stand together? What was that? They don't have our backs. It's inexcusable. Some considered it unwise. Judges are targeted. They're all scared about it. And emergency rulings. Yeah. All right. So anyways, I still think they're like unifying, right? It's a group effort to try to stall out the particulars of the administration. So yeah, it's not good. It's collusion. Sheila Poo, impeach them all. We have a real problem in this country where we have the judges who are taking over our policy decision-making. That is an oligarchy. They're not elected. They don't have that power under their constitution. What's up, Tony? Hey, Munkets in the house, bringing in 5 membos. Thank you, Tony. Hey, welcome aboard, 5 new friends. Lisa Gill, welcome. Robert Taylor, Hui is here. Neil Fleur and Captain Kazoo, gifted membos, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay. What's up, Savage Studios? Watchers, why do you think we have yet to see a single abusive shopped judge in the coup brought for impeachment, considering the obvious corruption? It's a great question. So personally, I think it's because Congress is just weak and ineffective, and they just have no real semblance of their body, like what they're supposed to do. We want our branches of government to like be aggressive and, like I would like Congress to be really aggressive towards the executive. And I want the executive to be really aggressive towards Congress. Same thing with the judiciary and all of the branches, because we win if that's the case. The American people and our liberties win if they're all fighting amongst themselves rather than having one oligarchical class. The whole structure is to create 3 buckets of elites and then let the elites fight with themselves. So what Congress has done over the years, and this has been just, this slow devolvement into kind of a one branch government. Okay. They're all kind of together. Yeah. We got like 3 branches, but all these independent bodies make the distinction between the Congress and the executive all dilapidated and kind of diluted. And Congress has just become feckless. It's like that meme with that little Shiba Inu dog who's like sitting there in a corner. Like you have that Chad dog and you got like the little dog in the corner. That's what Congress is. And it's pathetic. And they should do something about it. But they're all just ensconced in power. Nobody wants to rock the boat. And this is the problem with our Congress. This is why we need a lot more representatives in there. So we don't have so many, pathetic people sitting around doing nothing. Mock Schnell, what's up? 20 new membos. Thank you, Mock Schnell. Great to have you here. Debbie Doo, welcome. Bill Nye, the science denier, is in the house. Melissa, RCO Durr, Joe Booty. We got Coffee Fail. Just Me's here. Custom Costumes, Nola, Sweet Blondie, Shannon, Alvin Fletcher, FW11. What's up, Jade Mouse? Brendan's coming in. Cool is in the house. That's his name, like Oprah. Poke Overlord, Tanya Slater, Shane Wiseman, Dabadoo. We got Patrick Jackal 078P and more friends coming in, courtesy of Mock Schnell. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for all the generous invitations today. And the Dono says, hey, good afternoon, Robert. As always, great job enriching us with all your knowledge. Been such a great week in real life. So spreading the good Lord's blessings. Thank you, Mock Schnell. Very glad to hear that things are productive for you. And we appreciate you sharing the love with our community here. Simone Gacia says, if judges are afraid of retaliation for siding with Trump, they are admitting they fear harm from the left. Yeah, that's interesting too. And did they say that in the article? Or I felt like they were saying that the Supreme Court was siding with Trump and that they had to stop Trump essentially. But that is also a good point. And I mean, they didn't really address like the threats to Kavanaugh where, you know, there was an assassin who was going to come and eliminate him because he was brainwashed by the Democratic Party saying he was going to kill ladies or whatever. Ridiculous. Simone, thank you for the nice dono and for being here. Good to see you. We got Tony Hey Munkets, 5 more Membo friends coming in. Tony Hey, thank you. Neil, Brian Phillip, Average Week, Marie, and Ron Ferret, all gifted Membos, courtesy Tony Hey Munkets. Conjunction Junction, what's your function? Data 12 is here. My public school teacher said I can identify as a district court judge. Conjunction, injunction, function. Man, I like it. I mean, that was a lot more intelligent of a comment than anything we saw from these 12 judges in their little, why don't you have my back switch? So I think you could qualify 100% Data. Thank you. And your rhymes are great. King of Biltong. Get yourself some tasty high-protein snacks. Biltong is packed with B vitamins, iron, zinc, creatine, and more. And you can get some at BiltongUSA.com. And if you go there and load up and just fill the cart up with everything, you can use code Robert and you'll save 10% off. Thank you, King of Biltong, for the dono and for selling that Biltong, baby. Rick D says, apparently Joe is still having accidents. Here's a pic from Labor Day weekend of President Biden with a head wound. Oh, my goodness. Did he fall? It's a real photo? Man, that looks not good. Yeah, not good. Man, you know, you get old, you fall. It's not good. We don't want him to fall, but it's not a good sign. Yeah, it's not a good sign. And it leads to some questions about his capabilities and his competency over the last 4 years. Thank you, Rick D. He sent that from out of an airplane. What's up, Dark Rogue? Why wasn't Bolton's mustache in that warrant? It's the source of all of his power. Yeah, it's a good question. And you definitely want to run like a comb through there to see what kind of classified documents might fall out of there, you know? Dark Rogue. It is. He might have, you know, like Kim Jong-il stuffed in there, or Un. Maybe ill. Maybe he's not dead. I don't know. It's the source of his power. And it just looks dirty too. Wes Engel. I mean, it is an impressive stash. Like, let's be real. I mean, it is. Like, you know, you got to give credit where credit's due. Like, it's a hell of a stash. Probably filled with classified documents. Thank you for the dono, Dark Rogue. What's up, Wes Engel? Says black robe, tyrannical inferior district court judge Zenas. Oh, we forgot Zenas. You think she was in there? Probably. Zenas. Ah, yeah. Maybe she was in there. And designs that you use the H form of the Spanish X when you refer or defer to Her Highness. The H form. Like, I think we understood how to say it at one point. Somebody said it's like C knees. Oh, she said it. She said it's C knees, and she pointed to her knees. Okay, C knees, and she told that to a judge or told that to attorneys, and we went, oh gosh. So you're like one of those people. It's Gouveia. Call me Gouveia, Gouveia, whatever you want. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal to me. But it's C knees, you know. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and what's up, Lyons? El Yance in the house. Thank you for informing me of the name. Go to Article 3 Project, contact your reps, and demand that they support the president. Article 3 Project. Yeah, that's a nice project. That's Stephen Miller's thing, right? Sharpie guy, Rob. So who do we call or email without being inundated with donations to move the ball forward to impeach these corrupt, ignorant judges, Rob? Well, your House representatives. I mean, they should be starting this. You know, Jim Jordan, Comer, all the people on the Judiciary Committee should at least be talking about it. These judges are committing misconduct. You can't go talk to the press and talk smack about the Supreme Court. Congress has the responsibility to check the judges. The Supreme Court can't do it to themselves, so they need to do something. Jim Jordan and them need to do something about it. It's an important issue, maybe the most important issue. We have all of our policies are being stripped away from us from these hack judges. Sharpie Guy, thank you for that. So I'd contact your local rep. Daddy, caseload justifies adding hundreds of new Supreme Court justices. From Daddy. I don't know about that. Hundreds of Supreme Court justices sounds like a recipe for like another Congress or something. That sounds like a disaster. But they make those arguments. You know, the Supreme Court doesn't have to hear all the cases, right? It rejects a ton of cases. It doesn't have jurisdiction like the other courts do. But I certainly support Daddy, which is a weird name to say, you know. But anyways, I do support some serious reform, like the DC Circuit Court needs to be reformed or dismantled. Sharpie Guy. And I saw Democrats won the special election in Florida. People, y'all have to participate in every single election. Find out where they are and show up. Never too busy to do civic duty. No excuses, right? Thank you, Sharpie Guy. Yeah, no excuses. We got to participate. And there's a real concern about that. If Trump is not on the ballot, Republicans don't perform as well. And he's not always going to be on the ballot, you know. B Money. Thank you, B Money, for watching over on Rumble and for sending in some love. Says to show some love to the best legal mind on Rumble. Well, that's a nice endorsement, B Money. I don't know about that. There's a lot of very, very good legal minds over there. And we appreciate all our Rumble friends. Thanks for watching over here. What's up, B Money? Marley, Neuro D's modding over there. Donuts, good to see you. And good to see our friends. Hyphens over there. Snake Eater, nice to see you. What's up, buddy? All in the chat over there on Rumble. Nice to see everybody. And thank you, my friends, for sending in these awesome donos and supporting our work. Welcome, new membos. We're going to have an after party. Come join us in just a short minute. Let's see what's happening on X. See if we have any comments over there. I looked on the stream yesterday. We did have an error. So I guess we weren't streaming the whole time over there. But we're live now over on X. Mini Tika. Nice to have you. Thank you, Mini Tika, for sending in the Rumble link. We also had Fred Petamonte says, Rob, the majority of my super chats, besides Johnny's spying, has been about these judges. Just saying. You've been on it, Fred. We appreciate that. They are a problem. Oh no, the Supreme Court is overwhelmed with important cases. Seems like we might need more Supreme Court judges, says this person. OS2D. Yeah, and then like you pack them with right-leaning Republicans. FDR tried that, didn't work out well for him. Anyways, my friends, thank you for sending those in. Thanks for supporting our work and for being amazing and being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that. Thanks for liking the video. If your thumbs work, if not, your forehead will be just fine. But we're going to pause here for the evening. We're going over members only after party on YouTube, on Locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Click the join button on YouTube. We'll see you there. But it has been a beautiful stream, my friends. Thanks for being here. Big thanks to our mods and meme smiths. Shout outs to John, Donut, Carrie B, K Bean in the house, Neuro D, Dog Digger, Janek, G-Gum, Just Rhonda, and Elliot modding the fort down for us. Thank you for helping out. And my friends, thanks for being here. It's a beautiful Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to come back, and it's going to be a Friday. We're excited about that. It's not here yet, but we will be back to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news.